Chavdal, the 24th chapter of the book of Iyov, continues. Chapter 22, Eliphaz gave his third and last speech, and in chapters 23 and 24, Iyov has had his response to Eliphaz and his friends generally, or to himself, and he's going to continue now with that, and it's a very, very difficult chapter. Madua mishadai lo nitzpenu itim v'yodav lo chazu yamav. Why are times for judgment not reserved by Shaddai, by God? Even those close to him cannot foresee his actions, right? And right, Iyov wants a time to go and meet with God and discuss God's running of the world. He thinks it is incorrect and he thinks it's wrong. He knows it's wrong for him. And so why isn't there an exact time? Why is there not, come back at 9 a.m. The office is closed now. The store is open. Where's the number on the door? Where does it say when I could come? Gevulot yasigu eder gazlu va yiru. People remove boundary stones. They carry off flocks and pasture them, right? They come into these are people who always enter into your land, who always take the I don't know, you have a fruit tree and it's right next to their territory and they take it right there. They're moving into your territory. He's going to describe a lot of people who act in a very, very bad, evil fashion. Chamor yitomim yinhagu yachbelu shor almana. They lead away the donkey of the fatherless and seize the widow's bull as a pledge. Right here we have the yatom and almana, the widow and the orphan. Very often the classical examples, along with the stranger, of people in the Tanakh who don't have society behind them. They don't have people of strength, of power to support them. And so they're oftentimes the example of the poor who are taken advantage of. And so here we have people, they come into your land, they allow their pasture to eat their flock to eat your pasture. They lead away the donkeys and from the widows. They chase the needy off the roads. All the poor of the land are forced into hiding. Hein piraim bamidbar yatsu bifa'alim mishachrei lataref aravalo lechem l'na'arim. Like wild donkeys in the wilderness, they go about their tasks seeking food. The wilderness provides each with food for his children. Basadeh b'lilo yiktsoru v'cherem rasha yilakeshu. They harvest fodder in the fields and glean the late grapes in the vineyards of the wicked. Arum yalinu mibli levush v'ein ksut bakara. They pass the night naked for lack of clothing. They have no covering against the cold. This is what's happened now to the poor, to the widows, to the disadvantaged, because of these fraudulent behavior of some of wicked people. Mizerim harim yirtavu umibli machse chib kutzor. They are drenched by mountain rains and huddle against the rock for a lack of shelter. Yigzalu mishod yatom vial ani yachbolu. They snatch the fatherless infant from the breast and seize the child of the poor as a pledge. So they started by taking away the donkeys and the animals and maybe some of the crops, and now they're kidnapping children. Arum hilchu b'li levush urevim nasu omer. They go about naked for lack of clothing and hungry, carry sheaves. Bain shibutim yatziru yikavim darchu v'yitzma'u. Between rows of olive trees they make oil, and thirsty they tread the winepress. These are people who are being, right, they're suffering, they don't have proper work, they're not being protected by society, and they're me'ir mitim yin aku v'nefesh chalalim tishavea ve'eloha lo yasim tefillah. Men groan in the city, the souls of the dying cry out, right? All the suffering here for these people who are not protected, who are being punished by wicked actors, and they cry out to God. But there, as opposed to what we see in the regular books, we talked yesterday about or 2 days ago about the pledge, right? If somebody gives a pledge, you have to give it back to them at night. And in Sefer Shmot, in Parshat Mishpatim, God says to the person who lends out money but takes a pledge, you need to give the pledge back, because what will the poor person will have? No blanket, they'll have nothing to sleep in, they'll be cold at night, and I will hear their prayers, and I listen to the cries of the poor who are taken advantage of very often. Not all of them, but here, what is the end of verse 12? Again, I'll read the words. Ve'eloah lo yasim tefillah. But God does not regard it as a reproach. God does not listen to the tefillah. God doesn't hear the groaning and the crying out of the people who are suffering. And that's, of course, Iyov. He knows himself. Hema hayu b'mordei or lo hakiru drachav v'lo yashvu b'netivotav. They are rebels against light. They are strangers of its ways and do not stay in its path. Here we're going to see in the next few verses, we'll have a lot of or and a lot of choshech, about light and darkness. And of course, we talked about choshech and darkness and Iyov wanting to go back to a pre-creation period. And here, right, one of the things God does on the first day of creation, there's going to be light, there's going to be darkness. I'm going to distinguish. You want to say light, darkness, you want to say good, bad, however you want to describe it. There are distinctions in the world. There's separation. God is a mavdil. God separates kodesh and chol, or lachoshech. We haven't even started Shabbos, so I'm only doing Havdalah. But the problem here is that those distinctions aren't there for Iyov. There's not that distinction in the way that God runs the world between light and darkness. The poor are suffering, they're crying, they're taken advantage of. And what's God doing? As he said there in verse, right, in the end of verse 12, Pasuk Yud Bet, Veloha lo yasim tefillah. So continuing here, we're going to have a few different things. So here we're in 14. Laor, Yakum rotzeach yiktulu ani ve'avyonu v'alayli yekganav. The murderer rises in the evening to kill the poor and the needy, and at night he acts the thief, right? So, or in the light and darkness doesn't make a difference. For the wicked person, it's all wickedness. The eyes of the adulterer watch for twilight, thinking, no one will glimpse me then. He masks his face. Nobody's going to see me. In the dark, they break into the houses. By day, they shut themselves in. They do not know the light, right? They're hidden either from law and order. They're hidden from God's teaching and Torah and goodness and decency, and they're also hide themselves in so they won't be caught. For all of them, morning is darkness. It is then that they discern the terror of darkness. Right now, they're not concerned. They're not afraid. They've turned the world that could be light into all darkness or evil. Kal hu al pnei mayim. We're in 18. Tikulal chelkam ba'aretz lo yifne derech karamim. So, right, what he's saying here is he wants that these people, that their land should be cursed. Right? They shouldn't sell any grapes. They should be suffering for their horrors, for the infliction of terror and destruction and thievery and adultery, etc., etc. Gam chom yigzalumi may sheleg sheol chato. May drought and heat snatch away their snow waters. And Sheol, right, the netherworld where you go down to those who have sinned. You should end up there in a place where you cannot come back. Ishkachehu rechem Bitako rima od lo yizacher v'tishaver ke'etz avla. May the womb forget him. May he be sweet to the worms. May he be no longer remembered. May wrongdoers be like a broken tree. That's what Iyov wants. Roah kara lo tele v'almana lo yetiv. May he consort with a barren woman who bears no child, leave his widow deprived of good. Right? This is a case. He wants this to happen, but he knows he doesn't see it happening. Though he has the strength to seize bulls, may he live with no assurance of survival. Yet God gives him the security on which he relies and keeps watch over his affairs. So this wicked person, these wicked people causing catastrophe and chaos and horror and taking advantage, what happens to them, Iyov says? Nothing. It's as if God gives them protection. It's as if God allows them to do whatever they want, do whatever they're doing. There's no protection of them. There's no suffering for them. And that is terrible, according to Iyov. Continuing in verse 24, Rumo ma'at veinenu macho kachol yitzun v'charosh shibolet yimalu. Exalted for a while, let them be gone. Let them be brought low. Let them shrivel and wither like the heads of the grain. But Iyov sees that this is not happening. Ve'im lo, efo mi yachziveni, vayasem la'al milati. Surely no one can confute me or prove that I am wrong. And this is where Iyov finishes his last speech. In the last chapter, he spoke more. He had more positivity in the beginning in 23. he complains, but he still wants his court case, and he knows that if he's given a court case that he will win, that his claims are good as gold, and there's no way anybody can defeat him. But in this chapter, he just says this world is one where there's supposed to be reward and punishment, and God is supposed to be the overseer, and those who are wicked should be punished, but that's not what I see. They rob, and they steal, and they cheat, and they do all these things, and nothing happens to them. And you think of all these examples, and not that it's always so simple, but you think of Natan, Hanavi coming to David, or is it Gad Hanavi? I forget which one it is off the top of my head. After David sleeps with Bathsheba, a married woman, and has her husband killed, and tells David, Ataish, you're the one who did this. You're the one who caused this suffering. You're the one who caused this damage in the world. And you're going to be punished for it. Or all the times Yeshaya or Yirmiyah, the great prophets, or Amos scream and shout about fraud, about taking advantage of the widow and the orphan. And God maybe doesn't punish them directly right at the beginning, but is intervening through his prophets. And Iyov says here, that's not happening. God is not paying attention, or maybe God is even protecting them. It's a very harsh indictment of the world, an indictment of reality. And we don't have to think too far to think in our own world of people who act this way, who do terrible things to others and take advantage and fraud, and the whole idea that there's a whole part of law, elder law, which in theory to protect the elderly from people who take advantage of the elderly, and that's not the only thing in elder law. But that's a major component of it, taking advantage of people and figuring out ways to get a person who had wealthy parents whose IQ is 57 to change the person's will so that the money will. There are all of these terrible situations, and Iyov wants to know, why do all these things happen with a God who's supposed to be omnipotent, with a God who's supposed to be judging anything? How can this be happening? It's obvious that I am correct, and that God is not running the world correctly. And don't tell me about Schar Onesh, and don't tell me I'm a sinner, because perhaps if I was a sinner, then all these bad things would not have happened to me. It's very biting. It's a very difficult chapter. And we'll continue. The next chapter is going to be Iyov's second friend, Bildad, is going to offer his response. But I don't think anything that they say is going to have any convincing of Iyov, because he doesn't need to be convinced, because he knows, of course, that he is in the right.